The captain in this story is a composite character representing real 8th Air Force bombers who participated in Operation Cobra on July 24th and 25, 1944. The original records do not list the names of the specific crews who dropped the short bombs because no one judged them. As the 8th Air Force writes, the Air Corps did its job and did it well under very difficult conditions. All events, procedures, losses, and operational details are based on documented historical data. At 11:30 on the morning of July 24th, 1944, a jeep stopped outside the barracks at an 8th Air Force base in southern England. The driver said the captain was wanted in the operations room immediately. 26 years old, 17 combat missions complete, lead bombardier. He walked across the base, wondering if they were adding another mission to the day's schedule, or if something had gone wrong with the morning strike. Inside the operations room, 6 officers stood around a map table covered with radio messages. The group commander looked up. He said ground forces were reporting casualties from short bombing, American casualties. The bombs had landed 1,200 yards north of the target line, directly on American positions. Preliminary count was 25 dead, over 100 wounded. 30th Infantry Division, 120th Infantry Regiment, the men who were supposed to be safe behind the colored smoke line. The captain felt his hands go cold. He asked which wave. The commander said first wave, 09:30 release time. The captain had flown in the second wave, 30 minutes later. He asked if second wave ordnance had also hit short. The commander checked the messages. Second wave bombs on target. No friendly casualties reported from second wave. He told the captain to stand by. They were waiting for more information. There would be an investigation. Return to quarters. The captain walked back to his barracks. His hands were still cold. 25 Americans dead. He sat on his bunk and opened his navigation log. He had released his bombs at 09:18, 28 500-pound bombs, 14,000 pounds of high explosive dropped on coordinates provided at the morning briefing. He checked the numbers again. Everything matched, but first wave had used the same briefing, the same coordinates, the same reference markers, and their bombs had killed 25 American soldiers. 6 hours earlier, he had been sitting in the briefing room, listening to an Army major explain safety procedures. The major had pointed to a map of France and described how American infantry would withdraw 1,200 yards behind a road called the Saint-Lô-Perrier Road. Orange smoke panels would mark that road. Everything south of the orange smoke was the target area. Everything north was friendly forces. The major said the colored smoke would be clearly visible from bombing altitude. He said as long as bombardiers identified the orange smoke and released south of that line, there would be no danger to American troops. The captain had written this down. Orange smoke equals safety line. He had underlined it twice because this was his first mission bombing in direct support of ground troops. On his previous 17 missions, he had dropped bombs on submarine pens and aircraft factories and railroad yards, static targets marked on maps. If he missed by 200 yards, it did not matter because there were no American soldiers standing in the impact zone. This mission was different. American infantry was fighting 7 miles south of St. Lô. The bombing rectangle was 7,000 yards long and 2,500 yards deep. The margin for error was exactly 1,200 yards. Anything short of that line would hit friendly forces. The briefing officer had explained the mission parameters. Operation Cobra, the breakout from Normandy, 1,500 heavy bombers, 380 medium bombers, 550 fighter bombers, 4,000 tons of ordnance on a single rectangular target. The largest tactical bombing operation in history. After the bombing, the ground forces would advance through the gap torn in German lines. The briefing officer said the entire Normandy campaign depended on this strike. Get it right, and the war moves forward. Get it wrong, and American soldiers die in the hedgerows for another month. The captain had looked at the map. The target area sat in dense hedgerow country, small, irregular fields divided by earth embankments and thick vegetation, stone farmhouses, sunken roads, the kind of terrain where you could not see a German tank until you were 50 yards away. The intelligence officer said German positions were not visible from aerial reconnaissance. This would be area bombardment, saturation. Everything in the rectangle would be destroyed. The weather officer gave the forecast. Broken clouds at 8,000 feet, visibility 3 to 5 miles, not optimal, but acceptable. The captain asked about the approach axis. He said standard doctrine for close air support called for bombing parallel to the front line. That way, any range error would send bombs east or west, but not into friendly positions. The Army major nodded. He said General Bradley had requested parallel approach. 8th Air Force Command had declined. A parallel approach meant the bomber stream would fly along the front line for 7,000 yards. Extended exposure to German anti-aircraft fire. The perpendicular approach from north to south reduced that exposure time. There would be no parallel approach. The captain understood the reasoning, but it meant every bomb he released would be traveling on a trajectory that either hit German positions or American positions depending on range calculation. There was no lateral margin for error, only forward and back. South was enemy, north was friendly. The bombardiers would need to identify the Saint-Lô-Perrier's road through their bomb sites at 12,000 feet and verify that their aiming point was south of that line. The briefing ended at 05:15. The captain walked to his aircraft. The ground crew had loaded the bombs during the night. He climbed into the nose section and checked the Norden bomb site. The device sat on a gyro-stabilized mount. It would calculate bomb trajectory based on altitude and airspeed and wind. His job was to input the variables and verify the target. The site would trigger the release automatically when the solution was correct. They took off at 0735, crossed the English Channel at 12,000 feet. By 0900, they were over the target area on the bomb run. The captain activated the bomb site and looked through the eyepiece. He needed to find the Saint-Lô-Perrier road, identify the orange smoke panels, verify his aiming point was south of that reference line. What he saw instead was a wall of brown and gray smoke. The first wave had bombed 30 minutes earlier. The dust and debris from 1,500 tons of high explosive had not cleared. The wind was pushing it north across the target area. He could not see orange smoke panels. He could not see the road clearly. He scanned for landmarks. The briefing photographs had shown 3 roads running east to west through the target area. He needed the northernmost road, the safety line. He saw a road through gaps in the smoke. Pale line running east to west, approximately where the Saint-Lô-Perrier road should be according to his coordinates. Sections of it were visible between clouds of dust. He set his aiming point south of that road. The bomb site began tracking, crosshairs moving across the landscape below. German anti-aircraft fire started. Black bursts of flak around the formation. The aircraft shook. The pilot held steady. The bombardier owned the aircraft during the bomb run. The captain watched the crosshairs track toward the release point. He kept thinking about the orange smoke. He could not see it. The Army major had said it would be clearly visible, but all he could see was dust from the first wave and occasional glimpses of a road that might be the Saint-Lô road, or might be one of the other two roads in the target area. The map coordinates said it was the correct road. The geometry matched, but he could not see the orange smoke that was supposed to confirm everything north of that line was safe. The release light flashed. 14,000 pounds of bombs dropped free. He watched them fall, 28 dark shapes tumbling toward the hedgerow country below. He began counting, 15 seconds from 12,000 feet. The bombs disappeared into the dust and smoke. He saw the flashes, orange explosions merging into a continuous cloud. He could not see where individual bombs hit. He marked the mission complete in his log. Bombs released on target at 0918. They landed at 1040. The debriefing officer asked standard questions. Target identified. Yes. Enemy aircraft. No. Flak intensity. Moderate. Bombs on target. Yes. The officer marked it successful. The captain walked back to his barracks. Mission 18 complete. He would write the full report later. Then the jeep arrived. Now he sat on his bunk, looking at his navigation log. 25 Americans dead. First wave had bombed short. He had bombed 30 minutes later using the same reference line. The same road through the same dust cloud. The commander said second wave was on target, but the captain kept thinking about the orange smoke he never saw. He thought about the road that might have been the wrong road. He thought about the 15 seconds between release and impact when his bombs were falling toward coordinates he had verified twice, but could not actually see because of smoke from the previous wave. At 1800 hours, another briefing was called. The group commander stood at the front of the room. He said Operation Cobra would continue tomorrow. Same target area, same approach, same coordinates. First Army had confirmed the bombing had devastated German positions. The ground offensive would proceed. All groups would fly maximum effort missions. Takeoff at 0700. Briefing at 0430. The captain walked back to his barracks in the dark. He had 7 more missions to complete his tour. Tomorrow would be mission 19. Same target, same coordinates, same procedures that had killed 25 Americans this morning. He opened his navigation log and looked at the numbers again. Everything was correct. But somewhere in the 6,000 feet between his bomb site and the ground, something had translated correct numbers into dead Americans. And tomorrow he would do it again, because the mission was more important than the margins, and someone at First Army had calculated that the value of destroying German positions was worth the risk of killing more Americans with short bombs. He did not sleep that night. He kept seeing the orange smoke he never saw. He kept counting the 15 seconds between release and impact. He kept thinking about tomorrow. The briefing room at 0430 on July 25th held the same 43 men, but the atmosphere had changed. No one spoke while they waited. The captain sat in the third row with his clipboard. He had not slept. He kept seeing the wall of dust and smoke through his bomb site. The road he thought was the Saint-Lô road. The orange panels he never saw. The briefing officer entered at 0435. He pulled down the map sheet. The red yarn ran to the same target area south of Saint-Lô. The same rectangular box. 7,000 yards long, 2,500 yards deep. The officer tapped the map with his pointer. He said First Army had reported significant destruction of German positions from yesterday's strike. The ground offensive would begin immediately after today's bombing. All groups would participate. Maximum effort. Then he addressed the short bombing incidents from July 24th. 25 American soldiers killed, 131 wounded. First Army had conducted an investigation overnight. The cause was determined to be a combination of factors. Heavy dust and smoke from the first wave had obscured ground reference markers. Some bombardiers had difficulty identifying the Saint-Lô-Perrier road. Wind had pushed smoke north across the safety line. Several aircraft had released early due to perceived anti-aircraft threats. The briefing officer said new procedures were in effect to prevent recurrence. First, the approach axis would remain perpendicular, but bombardiers were instructed to verify visual contact with the Saint-Lô-Perrier road before releasing ordnance. Second, colored smoke marking the safety line would be replenished immediately before each wave. Third, Pathfinder aircraft would drop marker bombs on the southern edge of the target area to provide a clear aiming reference. Fourth, all bombardiers were reminded that target discipline was mandatory. No early releases, no drops without positive target identification. The captain wrote this down. Verify visual contact with road. Wait for fresh smoke markers. Use Pathfinder references. Do not release early. He understood what the briefing officer was not saying. Yesterday's procedures had been followed correctly, and 25 Americans died. Today's procedures were better, more precise, clearer markers, but they were still bombing perpendicular to the front line. Range errors would still send bombs north into friendly positions or south into empty fields. The fundamental geometry had not changed. The Army major stood up. Different major from yesterday. This one was a lieutenant colonel. He said ground forces appreciated air support and understood the challenges of close air support operations. He said American infantry had pulled back an additional 300 yards beyond the original safety line. Total separation was now 1,500 yards. He said this provided greater margin for error. He also said a senior officer from First Army would be observing the bombing from forward positions. Lieutenant General Lesley McNair, commander of Army Ground Forces. He would be with the 120th Infantry Regiment, the same regiment that took casualties yesterday. The colonel sat down. The briefing officer continued. Weather forecast, scattered clouds, better visibility than yesterday. Bomb loads unchanged. Fusing unchanged. Takeoff time 0700. The briefing ended at 0520. The captain walked to his aircraft. The ground crew chief asked if the mission was the same as yesterday. The captain said yes. Same target. New procedures. The crew chief did not ask about the American casualties. Everyone on the base knew. The captain climbed into the nose section. He connected his oxygen system and checked the bomb site. He placed his navigation log on the shelf. The new procedures were written across the top page. Verify road, fresh smoke, Pathfinder markers, positive identification before release. They took off at 0715. The formation assembled over England and turned south. The captain watched the French coast appear through broken clouds. Better visibility than yesterday. He could see roads and villages clearly. That should help. Better weather meant better target identification, less chance of confusion. At 0915, they reached the initial point and turned onto the bomb run. The captain activated the bomb site. He looked through the eyepiece, scanning for the Saint-Lô-Perrier road. The Pathfinder aircraft had already dropped their markers. He could see colored smoke rising from the southern edge of the target area. Red and green. That was the aiming reference. Everything between the Saint-Lô-Perrier road and those colored markers was the target zone. He scanned north looking for the safety line. He needed to see the road, needed to see the orange smoke panels. The briefing had said fresh markers would be in place. The visibility was better than yesterday. He should be able to see them clearly. What he saw was smoke. Not the thick dust cloud from yesterday, but definite smoke, gray and brown. He realized the Pathfinder markers and the bombing from earlier waves had created new smoke. Not as dense as yesterday, but enough to partially obscure the landscape. He could see sections of road through the gaps. He could see fields, hedgerows, but he could not see orange panels. He checked his coordinates. The map position of the Saint-Lô-Perrier road matched what he was seeing below, a road running east to west, approximately 1,500 yards north of the colored Pathfinder smoke. The geometry was correct, but the visual confirmation he was supposed to make was impossible because smoke from the Pathfinder drops had drifted north. The briefing officer had said, "Verify visual contact with road before release." The captain could see a road. He could not see the orange markers that were supposed to be on that road, but he could see the road itself. Did that constitute visual verification? The coordinates said this was the correct road. The position relative to the Pathfinder markers was correct. The only thing he could not verify was the colored smoke that was supposed to confirm it. German anti-aircraft fire began. The formations were stacked at different altitudes. His group was at 12,000 feet. Flak bursts appeared around them, black puffs. The aircraft shook from concussion. Standard defensive fire. The pilot held course. The captain kept his eye to the bomb site. He made a decision. The road position matched his coordinates. The Pathfinder markers provided a southern reference. The range from that road to the markers was 1,500 yards, according to the map. He could measure that distance through the bomb site. If he aimed south of the road by the prescribed margin, he would be in the target area. The colored smoke panels were somewhere on that road, even if he could not see them through the haze. He set his aiming point. The bomb site tracked. The crosshairs moved across the ground. He was following procedure. Visual contact with road achieved. Coordinates verified. Pathfinder markers identified. Aiming point set at prescribed distance south of safety line. Everything the briefing had specified. Everything the new procedures required. The release point approached. He thought about Lieutenant General McNair standing with the 120th Infantry Regiment somewhere below, 1,500 yards north of the road, safe behind the extended margin. The general was there to observe the effectiveness of the bombing, to see American air power support American infantry. The captain wondered if the general could see the bombers from the ground, wondered if he could see the bomb bay doors opening. The release light flashed. 28 500-pound bombs dropped. He watched them fall. Same dark shapes, same 15-second countdown. They disappeared into the haze. He saw flashes, the standard pattern. He could not determine exact impact points through the smoke. He marked the log. Bombs released at 0923, on target per coordinates. The formation turned west. They were out of the target area within 2 minutes. The captain looked back. More bombers were approaching behind them, wave after wave. The entire operation was proceeding as planned. Better weather, better procedures, better visibility. Everything improved from yesterday. They landed at 10:55. The debriefing was routine. Target identified. Bombs released per coordinates. No mechanical issues. The intelligence officer thanked him and marked the mission successful. Number 19 complete. 6 more to finish the tour. The captain walked back to his barracks. At 12:40, a jeep arrived. The driver said all bombardiers were to report to the operations room immediately. The captain walked across the base. Inside the operations room, more officers than yesterday. Maps, radio messages, silence. The group commander looked at the assembled crews. He said ground forces were reporting casualties from short bombing, multiple waves. Preliminary estimates indicated over 100 American dead, more than 400 wounded. The bombs had hit forward positions of the 30th Infantry Division, multiple regiments. The safety line had been breached by numerous aircraft. Someone asked which waves. The commander said all waves, first wave, second wave, third wave, throughout the morning strike. He said the investigation was ongoing, but initial reports suggested the same problem as July 24th. Difficulty identifying the Saint-Lô-Perrier road through smoke and haze. He paused. Then he said Lieutenant General Lesley McNair was among the dead, killed by an American bomb. His body had been recovered from a crater, identified by the 3 stars on his collar. The room stayed silent. The highest-ranking American officer killed in Europe, killed by American ordnance, during a mission where new procedures had been implemented specifically to prevent casualties, where margins had been extended, where pathfinder markers had been added, where bombardiers had been instructed to verify visual contact before release. The captain thought about the road he had seen through his bomb site, the road that matched his coordinates, the road he had used as his reference line because the briefing said to verify visual contact with the road, and he had visual contact with a road even though he could not see the orange smoke panels that were supposed to mark it. He thought about the aiming point he had set 1,500 yards south of that road, the point where his bombs were supposed to fall safely into the German target zone. The commander said all crews were to return to quarters and await further instructions. There would be a full investigation. Flight operations were suspended pending review. The captain walked out of the operations room. His hands were cold again. Yesterday, 25 dead. Today, over 100. And a 3-star general whose body was identified by his collar insignia because the rest was gone. He returned to his barracks and opened his navigation log. His calculations were correct. His coordinates matched the briefing. His aiming point was set at the prescribed distance from the reference line. He had followed the new procedures. He had verified visual contact with the road. He had not released early. He had done everything the briefing specified, and Lieutenant General McNair was dead, and over 100 American soldiers were dead, and they had all been standing 1,500 yards behind the safety line that was supposed to protect them. At 1600 hours, the group was called to formation. The operations officer read a statement from 8th Air Force Command. The bombing of July 24th and 25th had successfully devastated German defensive positions in the target area. Ground forces were advancing through the gap. Operation Cobra was achieving its objectives. American casualties from short bombing were tragic but acceptable given the scale of the operation and the strategic importance of the breakthrough. No individual crews would face disciplinary action. The incidents were classified as unavoidable errors inherent to large-scale close air support operations. The officer continued. All groups would resume normal flight operations tomorrow. Target assignments would be distributed at evening briefing. Crews were commended for their professionalism and accuracy under difficult conditions. Dismissed. The captain stood in formation. Acceptable casualties. Unavoidable errors. Resume operations tomorrow. The system had absorbed 136 dead Americans and determined that the mission was more important than the mistakes. Someone at headquarters had calculated that destroying German positions was worth the cost of killing American soldiers, and that calculation meant tomorrow he would climb into a bomber and drop more ordnance on coordinates provided by the same system that had provided the coordinates that killed Lieutenant General McNair. That evening, he sat in his barracks. He thought about Mission 20, 6 more after that to finish his tour. He thought about the Norden bomb site and the coordinates and the reference lines and the procedures that were supposed to prevent exactly what had happened. He thought about the 15 seconds between release and impact when his bombs were in the air, and there was nothing he could do except count and wait and hope the mathematics were correct. He did not know if his bombs had killed anyone. Second wave on July 25th, released at 09:23. The casualties were distributed across multiple waves throughout the morning. His ordnance might have landed in German positions. It might have landed in empty fields. It might have landed on the 120th Infantry Regiment, where Lieutenant General McNair was standing. He would never know. The system did not track individual bomb impacts, only mission success or failure, and the mission was successful. The next morning there was no briefing about St. Lo. The briefing on July 27th was for a target in central France, railroad marshalling yard near Orleans, standard strategic bombing, no ground forces within 10 miles of the impact zone. The captain sat in the third row with his clipboard. He had slept 4 hours in the past 3 nights. The briefing officer pointed to the map, altitude, heading, coordinates, expected flak moderate, fighter escort provided, standard procedures applied. The captain wrote nothing down. He looked at the map and saw the Saint-Lô-Perrier road. He looked at the coordinates and saw orange smoke that was not there. He looked at the railroad yard and saw Lieutenant General McNair standing with the 120th Infantry Regiment, 1,500 yards behind a safety line that turned out to be 1,200 yards too close. They took off at 0900. The formation assembled over the channel and turned south toward France. The captain climbed into the nose section and connected his oxygen system. He sat at the bombardier station and looked through the plexiglass at empty sky. At 10:45, they reached the initial point. The formation turned onto the bomb run. The pilot called for the captain to take control. Standard procedure. The bombardier owned the aircraft from initial point to bombs away. The captain looked through the bomb sight eyepiece. He could see the railroad yard clearly. Good visibility. No smoke, no dust. The target was exactly where the coordinates said it would be. Rails, switching stations, rolling stock, static target. No American soldiers anywhere near the impact zone. He set the aiming point. The bomb sight began tracking. The crosshairs moved across the railroad yard. German anti-aircraft fire started. Light flak. The aircraft held steady. The release point approached. The captain watched the crosshairs track toward the trigger point. His hand was on the release lever. Backup manual release in case the automatic system failed. The crosshairs reached the release point. The automatic system did not trigger. Malfunction. The captain had 3 seconds to pull the manual release. He had done this on 2 previous missions. Pull the lever, bombs away. The railroad yard was centered in the sight picture. Perfect geometry, perfect conditions. His hand would not move. The railroad yard passed beneath the aircraft. The release point passed. The bomb run was complete. No bombs released. The pilot called over intercom asking for confirmation of bombs away. The captain said negative. System malfunction. Manual release also failed. They would return to base with full bomb load. They landed at 12:15. The bombs were unloaded. The aircraft inspection found no mechanical failures. The automatic release system functioned correctly during ground tests. The manual release lever operated normally. There was no technical reason why the bombs had not dropped. The group commander called the captain to his office at 1600 hours. The commander asked directly if the captain had intentionally refused to release the bombs. The captain said no. He said he pulled the manual release lever and it did not function. The commander looked at the maintenance report. He said the lever functioned normally during ground tests. He asked if the captain was experiencing difficulties related to the St. Lo missions. The captain said no. The commander studied him for 30 seconds without speaking. Then he said the captain was being removed from flight status pending medical evaluation. Standard procedure for combat fatigue. Report to the flight surgeon tomorrow morning. Dismissed. The flight surgeon interviewed him the next day. Standard questions. Sleep patterns. Appetite. Concentration. The captain answered honestly. He had not slept properly since July 24th. His appetite was diminished. He experienced difficulty concentrating during bombing runs. The surgeon made notes. He asked about St. Lo. The captain described the smoke. The road he thought was the St. Lo Perrier road. The orange markers he never saw. The surgeon wrote in his file, combat fatigue resulting from extended operations, recommended for non-flying duties. The captain was reassigned to base operations, administrative work. He would remain at the base, but would not fly. That evening, he requested access to the casualty reports from Operation Cobra. The operations officer gave him 15 minutes with the files. First Army had compiled detailed lists, names, ranks, units, 136 Americans killed over 2 days. The captain read every name, 25 from July 24th, 111 from July 25th. The list did not specify which wave killed which soldiers. It only recorded that they died from American bombs during Operation Cobra. He copied the names into his notebook, all 136. He tried to calculate the probable impact pattern of his bomb string from July 25th. 28 500-pounders released at 0923 from 12,000 feet. The bombs would fall in an elliptical pattern approximately 200 yards long. Where that pattern intersected, the ground depended entirely on whether the road he used as his reference line was actually the St. Lo Perrier road. The mathematics were simple, but the answer was impossible. He would never know if his bombs killed anyone. The system did not track individual impacts, only mission outcomes, and the mission was successful. 2 weeks later, the commander told him he was being transferred stateside. New assignment, training command in Nebraska. He would instruct bombardier students. No combat missions. The commander said it was important work, training the next generation. The captain said he understood. He was to report in 30 days. On his last day at the base, the operations officer gave him his personnel file. All his mission reports were inside. 19 missions total. The St. Lo missions were marked successful. No notation about friendly fire casualties. No mention of Lieutenant General McNair. Only standard entries. Target bombed. Ordnance released per coordinates. Mission complete. The official record said he had been transferred to training command due to completion of combat tour requirements. Nothing about combat fatigue. Nothing about the 136 names. The system had processed the events of July 24th and 25th and determined that what happened was acceptable, and now it was time to move forward. He took the train to Nebraska. He reported to Training Command in September 1944. He taught bombardier students how to operate the Norden bomb sight, how to calculate trajectories, how to verify coordinates, how to identify targets through limited visibility. He taught them that precision was everything, that following procedures would ensure accuracy, that the mathematics would work if they trusted the system and executed properly. The students were 18 and 19 years old. They took notes. They asked questions about combat operations. They wanted to know what it was like to bomb real targets under fire. The captain told them it was a matter of training and discipline. He told them the Norden bomb sight was the most accurate bombing instrument ever developed. He told them American bombardiers were the best in the world. He showed them how to set coordinates, how to track moving crosshairs, how to identify the release point, how to verify that their aiming point matched their briefing data. He never told them about smoke-obscuring reference markers. He never told them about roads that looked correct according to coordinates but might be the wrong roads. He never told them about the 15 seconds between release and impact when you had already made your decision, and nothing remained except counting and hoping the numbers were correct. He never told them about acceptable casualties or unavoidable errors or mission success measured against statistical losses. He taught them what the manual said, and they learned it, and they graduated, and they went to Europe, and they bombed targets. The captain kept the list of 136 names in his notebook. He kept it in his desk at Training Command. Sometimes he took it out and read through the names. He tried to remember what he saw through his bomb sight on July 25th at 09:23. He tried to remember which sections of road were visible through the smoke. He tried to remember the exact moment he set his aiming point and the exact distance he calculated from his reference line to his target coordinates. But memory was imprecise, and the mathematics were incomplete, and the system had determined the question was irrelevant because the mission was successful and the war had moved forward. Operation Cobra achieved its objectives. The Normandy breakout succeeded. American forces advanced across France. The strategic calculus was correct, even if the tactical execution killed 136 Americans, whose names appeared in classified casualty reports that very few people would ever read. The captain taught bombardier students for 14 months. In December 1945, the war ended and Training Command scaled down operations. He was discharged in February 1946. He returned to civilian life. He did not talk about the war. When people asked, he said he served as a bombardier in the 8th Air Force and flew 19 combat missions and was transferred to Training Command in 1944. He did not mention St. Lo. Most people did not ask about specific operations. The war had been large and long, and most combat missions blurred together in memory and official history. The notebook with 136 names remained in his possession. He never showed it to anyone. He never threw it away. It was simply there, a record of something the official files did not contain. A list the system had processed and filed and moved beyond. And when he taught those students in Nebraska, he had stood in front of them and explained how the Norden bomb sight calculated trajectories and how precision bombing worked and how following procedures ensured accuracy. He had taught them everything except the distance between correct procedures and correct outcomes. He had taught them the mathematics, but not the 15 seconds when mathematics became names.